The Gem State is changing every day, and as it does, the Idaho Matters podcast will help you know more about the changing communities and governments and cultures of Idaho. Listen to Idaho Matters today at boisestatepublicradio.org or in your favorite podcast app.
Good morning, happy Friday. It's The Connector, Idaho Daily News from Boise State Public Radio. I'm Troy Oppie. This morning, a bill adding work requirements to Idaho's Medicaid expansion program is advancing at the State House. We check in on Idaho's snowpack and drought conditions across the state. A new park could be coming to the West Bench in Boise, and a new poll shows widespread support for the nation's parks and forests. That's no surprise, but it matters in the current environment. Those stories, plus an Idaho college basketball team is a top seed in a postseason tournament. Let's get going. It's The Connector, Friday, March 7th. At the State House, the latest bill to add work requirements to Idaho's Medicaid expansion program is headed to the Senate. Here's James Dawson with the story.
The bill easily cleared the House Thursday along party lines with little debate. Republican Representative Jordan Redmond's prior bill would have repealed Medicaid expansion if the state didn't get approval from the federal government on several conditions. His latest proposal largely focuses on requiring participants to work, study, or volunteer for 20 hours per week to qualify.
Medicaid expansion was brought into place for the working poor. Right now we have 47% of them not working.
House Democratic leader Elena Rubel says the bill's monthly reporting rules are too onerous. She also points out parents with children ages 6 or older would have to meet these work requirements.
This basically strips out the ability for those at home and homeschooling to remain on Medicaid without having to be out in the workforce and reporting.
State senators will take up the issue next. James Dawson, Boise State Public Radio News.
Governor Brad Little wasted little time signing House Bill 40 into law yesterday. That bill cuts the personal and corporate income tax rate in Idaho by nearly 0.4 of a point to 5.3%. The bill also exempts some military pensions from state income tax, and it drops capital gains tax on precious metals sales. The bill is expected to reduce income tax revenue by $253 million, and when combined with other tax and spending proposals, some already law, like the school choice tax credit bill, others still being debated, the Idaho Capital Sun reports the total potential hit to Idaho's revenue this legislative session is $450 million. That's more than 4 times the size of the tax cut the governor envisioned in his State of the State address at the start of the session. Legislative leaders Wednesday finally agreed on $6.4 billion as the expected revenue for the next fiscal year. That decision came the same week as the state budget office says revenue for the current fiscal year was lagging behind projections. Legislation that blocks local building code from requiring a certain number of parking spots for electric vehicles is headed to the governor's desk. It passed the House last month, and the state Senate approved it on a near party line vote this week. The legislation came as the Ada County Sheriff's Office is in negotiations with the city of Boise over EV parking spot requirements for the Ada County Jail expansion. Weeks ago, county officials told me they had nothing to do with the legislation, but Republican Senator Todd Lakey said Wednesday on the Senate floor it was the county that brought the issue to state lawmakers' attention.
This legislation, I'll say, comes as a follow-up to concern expressed by one of our local government entities, particularly Ada County.
Through a spokesperson Thursday, Ada County Board of Commissioners Chair Rod Beck confirmed he did talk, quote, conversationally about the issue with lawmakers, but the county had no role in drafting the legislation, he said. Beck added the county was in full support of the bill. Boise's modern zoning code requires a minimum number of EV parking spaces. It's based on a calculation of building size and type. Charging equipment was not required, but spaces had to be built with conduit and at the appropriate size. Mayor Lauren McLean said this week the requirement was a way to future-proof buildings, and the new legislation hurts citizens in the long run. It's not clear what happens next with the jail expansion plans. The county had an appeal hearing planned early next month with the city over the EV parking space issue. McLean says the city plans to look for willing partners to work together on EV infrastructure in the future. The mayor's full comments on the issue are in the conversation we shared this week. You can listen to that now at boisestatepublicradio.org. Moving beyond politics, this winter has brought a decent amount of snowpack to Idaho's high country. That said, just over 140,000 Idahoans remain in drought areas. Here's George Prentice with more.
Drought remains and is intensifying in some regions of the Pacific Northwest.
And that's how the National Weather Service launched its most recent Drought and Climate Outlook briefing. That's where we learned scores of Idaho counties continue to experience moderate or severe drought. Eastern Idaho, stretching from Lemhi, Clark, and Fremont counties down to Teton, Bonneville, Caribou, and Bear Lake counties, are especially dry. Idaho's Panhandle, too, particularly Shoshone County. Along the southern tier, sections of Hawaii, Twin Falls, and Cassia counties are too dry. And the National Weather Service's Aaron Peters says our 3-month outlook isn't too promising.
Southern Idaho there does lean below normal for precipitation and slightly warmer.
And climatologist Dr. Zach Hoylman said much of the rest of the region can expect the same.
Low stream flow, dry soils have produced widespread regions of moderate and severe drought conditions in Washington, Idaho, and Montana.
According to the most recent U.S. Drought Monitor, an estimated 147,000 Idahoans live in drought areas. George Prentice, Boise State Public Radio News.
The city of Boise announced it wants to purchase a 2/3 acre lot off Allenbaugh Street between Fairview and Northview Streets in the West Bench to make a new local park. The proposal from the city's Parks and Recreation Department would cost $550,000. That's about a quarter of what's already available for such purchases in the existing Open Space and Clean Water Levy Fund. The city in a press release says the family that currently owns the land was excited to see their parents' property become lasting open space. City Council will take up the purchase at its meeting this coming Tuesday. New polling shows widespread support for increasing or keeping funding at least the same for national parks and forests. The poll comes on the heels of the Trump administration's recent firings of federal park and forest employees. Here's the Mountain West News Bureau's Caleb Radel with more.
Think tank Data for Progress found only 10% of voters support decreasing federal funding for the National Parks and Forest Services. A majority of voters are very or somewhat concerned about the Trump administration's firing of thousands of workers at those agencies. Their top concern is the economic impacts of job losses on communities and the ripple effect of reduced services and public safety. Some are worried reducing the workforce will increase the nation's wildfire risk. Others are concerned it will lead to habitat loss and threats to wildlife. Here's Grace Adcox with Data for Progress.
These impacts will be wide-reaching with huge ramifications, not just for employees of the Park Services, but also anyone who might be wanting to enjoy that natural landscape or just see what their tax dollars have been going towards protecting and preserving.
The staffing cuts have led to large organized protests at national parks across the country, including several in our region. For the Mountain West News Bureau, I'm Caleb Radel.
Late this week, an independent federal board ordered the U.S. Department of Agriculture to temporarily reinstate close to 6,000 employees that had been fired since February 13th. We close on this Friday with sports. Number 1 ranked and top-seeded College of Idaho will face 16-seed UC Merced in the opening round of the men's NAIA National Basketball Championship Tournament next week. The NAIA field was released late yesterday. C of I is a first and second round host site. They will have Friends College of Kansas and Florida Memorial facing off in the other first round game 1 week from tonight. The winners then play March 15th, Saturday, in Caldwell. The College of Idaho women's team is also in the NAIA National Championship Tournament. They hit the road for Great Falls, Montana as a 12 seed. The Yotes face 5th-seeded Providence College, the host team from Montana, next Friday evening. And tonight in Boise, the number 2 seed of the Mountain West Conference Tournament is on the line. Boise State hosts Colorado State. It's the regular season finale. For the men, New Mexico locked up the top seed for the conference tournament already, but the Broncos would jump into the 2nd seed if they get a win tonight on senior night. A loss would likely drop Boise State down to the 5th seed for next week's conference tournament. It's a big game tonight at 8 o'clock. The broadcast is on FS1. Hope you have a great weekend and come back to catch us for another episode on Monday morning, March 10th. And mark your calendars for March 19th. It's another round, our meet and greet series. That's Wednesday evening, March 19th. We'll be at the Mad Swede Brew Hall in downtown Boise. You can come meet me as well as our general manager, other staff, Samantha Wright, and some other personalities you're probably familiar with too. Come say hi. I'm Troy Oppie. Our general manager is Tom Michael. Our news director is Sasha Woodruff. Our digital strategy manager is Lacey Daly. The Connector is a production of Boise State Public Radio News.